was a wonderful introduction. Thank you so much. I'm really honored to be the first guest speaker here in Immersive's AI series. And I will start sharing my screen from now on. I can't share my screen if you're sharing a screen. Okay. Let me know if you guys can see it. Amazing. Great. Okay. Cool. Today I'm very excited to share my learnings and thoughts on designing of XR because it's something that I have been deeply involved in over the past few years. So a little bit about me. I'm Bini Park. I'm the founder of PLAI, an XR game studio that's based in New York City. As an XR prototyper and product designer, I spent the last few years building mixed reality applications that can be benefits from XR technologies. So I feel like my goal is to design intuitive and accessible interactions that makes XR experience feel natural and easy to use. So for today, since today is first sessions, I think it'll be great to start with the basics. And I thought it will be helpful to frame everything around a questions that I keep returning to my own work. What are we actually building in XR? To answer that, I'll walk you through today what XR really is, my design principles that I used for my design process, and a little bit of use cases. And then I'll go into user interactions flow in XR. So by the end of today, my goal is to let you not only understand what and why XR, but also how to think like an XR designer. Okay, let's give it a shot. What XR really is. So ever since Facebook rebranded in Meta, I feel like it was like 2021, the terms VR, AR, MR, and metaverse, like all this buzzword became the viral. It became really important stuff that every people was talking about in that year. And so suddenly XR kind of seems to look like a brand new thing. However, the truth is that the journey of XR started like a decades ago. One of the earliest example was Ivan Sutherland's head-mounted display prototype in the 60s, who is often referred to as a godfather of VR. And starting from there, we evolved from simple computer display to phones where we can see digital elements alive, which is augmented reality, and head display where we can see the whole view filled with the new environment, which we call virtual reality. And then we are able to interact with the virtual elements and digital elements with our physical space, which is mixed reality. So in this way, you are able to measure your table without rulers. You just have to have your phone, play with others in virtual worlds, or even raise a virtual pet that interact with your physical space. And this is what Paul Milgram introduced, which is called Reality Virtuality Continuum, a spectrum from the fully real to fully virtual. And this is where like the mixed reality sits in the middle by blending the real and digital in a way that feels kind of seamless and interactive. So today, you may heard of a lot of terms of XR, which is extended reality that acts as an umbrella term for everything that I explained: virtual reality, augmented reality, and mixed reality. The term XR, I believe it gained popularity with the OpenXR standard around 2016, but the core idea have been in development for much longer. So what is XR doing right now? How's XR working in this current community? So I feel like when every emerging technologies has a hype cycle where everyone is excited about the new technology, but it takes longer than they imagine, so the hypes kind of go down. But techs keep evolving and slowly entering the phase where techs become the part of everyday life. And XR right now, I feel like it's close to the turning point, not yet there. XR is becoming accessible to customers, so you think about it, you can walk into the store, buy headsets, and start using it to play games, learn, collaborate, or create. But I will say it's not there yet because headsets is not really a good it's not a hardware that people can use for every single day. But the thing is, the AR glasses are coming. Starting from the last year, we have seen that XR community was moving from games and entertainment to a serious use cases like healthcare, educations, productivity. And more on, AR glasses like Spectacle X Real are coming. So with this context, so the real questions for us as a designer, or if you guys are engineers, becomes what does good design looks like in this new world? So I'll start with this design principles. I bet you have all seen this kind of scenes from movies, Iron Man, Minority Reports, where someone like waves their hands in the air, swipe through the interface, and call up the entire files with like what he's doing, like a snap of your hand. It feels like very amazing. It feels amazing. It's very futuristic. It's very powerful, but we kind of like assume that yeah, that's where we're headed for. That's the future AR glass is gonna look like. But here's the thing: those interactions were made for movies, not for humans. They're designed to look cool on cameras, not necessarily to feel natural or usable in real life. So in reality, what we need is something clear, intuitive, and easy to use. It might seem a bit difficult to imagine like designing for XR, but honestly, the principle of good design, are actually pretty universal. Because we have been designing for humans for centuries, and the truth is that humans haven't changed. So I've broken down to two key concepts that I use when I'm designing for XR. First step is thinking about instinctual design. We need to understand human. If you think about everyday interactions, design, and inventions that we have used it for decades, we can't figure out that we didn't really have to learn about them. Pressing the buttons, no one had to teach us that. You just press it because there's a button and it's kind of fun to press the button. Drinking from straw, this is very instinctive because we knew how to do it as we were a baby. Hear the sudden sound behind us. When we hear it, we just immediately turn towards it and to figure out what's going on. These are the natural behavior that we all shared. In XR, we also want to design interactions that feel just as normal. Something like grabbing an object with your hand, poking the button, pinching your fingers to zoom in or out. Even the small cues like the sound drawing from your attention should feel familiar and automatic. Like the example that I'm showing on the left side, that's a game from Mastro. And if you see it closely, they have this visual cues and sound cues that kind of attract the players' attentions to let them know that which place to look at it. And we already knew how to move through spaces because we're living in these dimensions. And VR and XR design should work with our instincts, not against them. The second idea is a systematic design. Behind instincts, we have already created shared systems that help us navigate the world. If you think about this AIGA pictogram, and you can see in public, airport, transportations, which universally understand across culture and communities. The shape of like X, the square, the dash that we use to close the windows, we have been using it for decades. If you see a blue text with underline, we kind of assume that it's related with hyperlink. All of that are not just the visual choices. They are socially agreement built through consistency. So new systems are invented for people to use technologies in a simple and universally understandable way. And in XR, we're still building those systems, which means it's a both challenge and opportunity for us to shape the visuals and behavioral language for new mediums. About the user interactions flow, I'm not sure if any of you guys are familiar with UX UI design, but when we design typically 2D user interface, we think in pixel. screen space, tap targets, or margin. But in XR, we design in physical space. We need to think about where things are, how far it is, and how they feel about user. To understand a bit about the spatial UX works in XR, I brought up a lot of examples and some of the favorite foundational resources that I used a lot during my studies. So there is VR designer. Well, it's like more like a researcher that I like, Mike. He kind of started by explaining the film industry, how they use the term title safe, action safe zone. So important visual don't get cropped out of frame. And XR has pretty similar idea, but in 3D. And we call them content zone or visual zone, viewing zone, comfortable zone. There's not that kind of term that we define it, but these are the invisible volumetric areas where around, sorry? I'll keep going. These are like invisible volumetric areas around the users that help us decide where to place or not place the informations. So how Mike break it down was several comfort-based spatial zone using metrics from early VR headsets, like how far we can comfortably rotate our head or focus our eyes. So first zone that he defined was the no-no zone. Anything closer than 0.5 meters to our face is considered as uncomfortable. It's hard to focus on, it strains our eyes and cause fatigue. So we kind of promised to keep this space clear of persistence UI or controls. The second is comfort zone, where 1 to 10 meters out, and this is the sweet spots where we put most of the stuff like interactive elements, floating buttons, and even character feel more natural in there. So user can focus, perceive depth, and stay comfortable. So beyond 20 meters, if you pass that point, depth perception drops down. You lose the stereo 3D effect, so anything important shouldn't live out there. The zone like this is considered as best for background visuals. Now, besides the distance, let's talk a little bit about the angles. One of the Samsung interaction design, Alex Chu, has done the research into comfortable range motions. So horizontally, we can turn our head to 30 degrees to either sides. And vertically, people can comfortably look downwards to 15 to 50 degree, I believe, for a longer period. That's where, like persistence contents like menus should sit. And my favorite research is from Google, who introduced something called DIMS, distant independent millimeters, which kind of led us to size UI elements using real-world physical measurement instead of pixels. And that way, a button like placed a meter away or 3 meters away both feel consistently usable. So like imagine designing not just on screen, but instead of 3D dome that surrounded the users. And apparently that dome has a reel. So next is wireframing in 3D. And typically in 2D design, we use wireframe to sketch layouts. In XR, we use the method called gray boxing, placing basic 3D shapes in a world to test out interactions flow before the visuals are added. But the key difference that I think is you don't just look at 3D wireframe. You kind of need to feel it. You are designing for the whole body, so you need to know how user reach, look, walk, lean, or gesture. So this is some example in my game, Piano Cafe. For instance, instead of pressing the start button, we ring the bell that physically placed in the space, because the game is about a cafe and you need to enter the restaurant, so you ring the bell. And when you enter the menu scenes, instead of clicking on menu icon, you need to grab and wear the aprons instead. So kind of resemble that you are ready to cook. And this thing reinforcing something really important, which is in XR, interactions is embedded in the world, not just flowing on top of it. Lastly, I would love to talk about this input considerations because over the years, companies like Meta, Microsoft, and others have introduced a variety of interactions model. Some have become common standard, others are still experimenting. For those that are considered as most common and still widely used is poke and raycasting. And I feel like the reason behind is because it's kind of familiar with the experience that we had with 2D. You poke flowing buttons like you would do it on the screen with the touchpad. You will aim the laser point from your hand or controllers, which is great for reaching the distance, and that kind of reminds us a mouse and a cursor. And menus in XR can take many forms. These three are very typical and standard menus that we use in XR. Circular options that surrounded a point, which is a great to select near your hand. Wrist menu is a UI panel that lives on your wrist, kind of like a watch for easy access to tools and options. And I see a lot of people using this for FPS game. And the palm menus is contextual pop-up that appears right where you're looking or interacting. Now, the challenge here is typing in a VR. Some common method is obviously floating VR keyboards where you need to poke each letter in a space, which is very slow and tiring. But alternately, people use the Bluetooth keyboards, which is honestly more practical for a serious task. For my favorite is voice detections because I don't have to use my hand. My favorite tool is this input from Logitech XR Pen where you can write or draw on a real surface while it's being tracked in 3D spaces. So this is kind of like a hybrid physical digital inputs holds a lot of promise, especially for creative works or educations. Okay, I feel like let's go back to our original questions. What are we actually building when we design for XR? I don't think there is a right or a wrong answer for this, but personally, I think we're building environment. Not just screen or interface, we're building environment, which makes us part technologist, part architect, part storyteller, and maybe a bit of interior design. And our job is to make those environment ideally inviting, accessible, and easy to understand. For me personally, I feel like the next step is to continue to create inclusive, welcoming space, especially as we move towards to the future with AR glasses and multi-device cross-platform ecosystem that blends the physical and digitals together. And for you, whoever is listening, whether you're just starting out or exploring XR and AI, or already have built something, I hope this basic talks about XR give you like clear picture of what is possible and what is not. Thank you so much for listening. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself or use the chat box. I feel like we have a few minutes for our Q&A sessions now.
That's right. Thank you. Firstly, thank you so much, Bini. That's been a very liberating session. I think many of us did not know about the grids. Many of us who are practicing UI UX did not know about that. And I think this session has been an eye-opener. People, I would love you all to put the questions on chat so that she can take up more answers and questions as possible. Bini,